everybody. It's day 143 of spiritual healthcare. Welcome to this amazing Wednesday morning, and I hope everybody is doing really, really well. It's hard to believe it's day 143, but it is, and here we are. So it's good to see everyone. It's actually beautiful weather out here today. We're going to get a little bit of rain, which is something that's needed here in Alberta because, we're going to hopefully not have a summer of forest fires, but you never know. So good morning everyone, good morning. It is say day 143. Some really awesome questions today from Twitter, from email, from all sorts is coming in today. We're talking about orbs, we're talking about thought patterns, we're talking about there's all sorts of stuff. And something really cool is that Rainn Wilson, of all people, which shouldn't surprise me because Rainn Wilson owns the amazing company Soul Pancake, which is sort of a spiritually oriented group, which I adore. They're so uplifting. Has a new paranormal podcast, which I think is like spectacular, which is wonderful. So good morning everyone. Good morning Dan and Marge and Ed and everybody. It's good to see you all. Say day 143. Here we go. It's good to see everyone. Morning Des, morning everybody, morning Sally. I see you popped up in there. Everybody's here. It's a great conversation today. I'm stoked because as I say, we got a really great question on orbs from Cookies Queen on Twitter. Some really awesome questions. Good morning, Ricky. About negative thought and manifestation and all sorts of stuff like that as well. From a number of people actually. So I'm going to be sort of covering a bunch in one topic. Dan says, yeah, he thought it was day 4. Yeah, I know. It's like we're going to be into the hundreds of thousands. You know that eventually. Good morning, Kaz. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, we've got it's crazy that it's already day 143, but I mean soon it's going to be like, hey, it's day 6,896. I don't know. It's this is crazy. So I hope you guys have been amazing. I hope you guys had a really great weekend. My weekend was pretty eventful. I shot a new video for my other job, Snake and Pyre, my fire company, and it was a really exhausting Monday and kind of an exhausting weekend, but it was great. It was a lot of fun. Blew a lot of fireballs and ate a lot of fire, and it was really fun. It was really fun. A good friend of mine, Ian Hunter, did my videography, which was really good. And yeah, the whole gang, we ended up having a pretty cool, yeah, it was good. It was really good. So it was fun. It will be out soon. Irene says, love your hair. Thank you. It's a little faded actually. It was rose gold. And there's usually more pink in it than this, but what can you do? Thank you, Mark. So let's get at this, you guys. Let's get at this. So great questions today, as I say, both from Twitter and stuff that's come in by email about first bunch was about orbs, actually, the first question, which I thought was really good because we've talked a lot about this, like the phenomenon of orbs over the last number of the weeks that have gone by with spiritual healthcare. And I've mentioned to people before that the majority of these orbs that people are catching on film are extremely explainable. And most of them have to do with how close objects like particles and things like that are to the lens of your camera versus how far the lens and the flash are together. So for example, I'm going to use this like really old phone to give the example. I'll run this through really quick and then I'm going to answer the question. So the people that are catching these kind of opaque circles, right, floating around the screen. I used to do a demonstration in a couple of my classes about this. I used to recreate this for my classes. So I'm actually not talking out of my hat here. I used to do this. So what we would do is that we would go down, I would take the class down into this kind of finished basement of a museum where I was holding this class. And I would set up my CCTV cameras so that, you could see on the monitor what was going on and whatever. And I would have one of my investigators actually go behind, go in front of the camera and jump as hard as they could on the floor so it would stir up as much crap as we possibly could. And of course, you'd see this cloud of orbs float in front of the camera. It would be crazy. And basically what's happening is that when you have something that is super, super small, tiny little particle, whether it be dust, pollen, moisture, whatever that is, what ends up happening is that it gets blown out of focus, and you get these little orb things that look like they're all over the place. And they follow the air currents, right? They follow the air currents. So what happens with cameras and with phones and things like that is that you've got the lens and the flash, right, that are super, super, they're flat. They're like right up against each other. When you get a DSLR camera, a professional camera, you've got your lens out here and you've got your flash up here, right? So you've got a bit of a distance. So the flash itself is illuminating less right in front of that lens. And that actually kind of helps to stop that orb phenomenon, where it stops blowing out these tiny little particles so badly in the frames. But our phones don't do that, and neither do like the point and shoot cameras that we buy and whatever. And that's why you see professional photographers, they're not getting orbs like we are on our phones, and that's why. So the Cookie's Queen question, it goes a little bit further than that, which is there one thing to look for that means it might be an actual orb, so something that's actually a physical anomaly in the space, or should I stop filming dust? So really good question. So what I ended up telling them was the fact that when ultimately with orbs, or with actual like energetic orbs, you see them with the naked eye. They're really unmistakable. They're quite bright. They come in a whole pile of different colors too, but they're quite bright. And they will, they'll zip around. Some of them are quite slow and undulating. And there's amazing footage out there, if you guys want to look it up at some point, about a haunting. I think it was called, I want to say it's called the Black Forest or something like that. I will find the video and throw it up on the EntitySeeker Facebook page. But this Black Forest and the haunting that's there, and you get to see these orbs sort of in slow motion moving, and it's incredible. But I've seen a number of them myself. Steph and I at one point investigated a very old haunted hospital, go figure, back in the day. And I remember going down this one corridor, and we had this one great big bright orb zip right in front of the two of us. It came out one wall and zipped and disappeared into the other wall. And it was cool. Like, it's cool. It's really, really neat. One of the most, I think, entertaining stories that I've had with orbs was I was with two of the photographers that I work with, Zach and Greg, and we were down in the Edmonton River Valley. The Edmonton River Valley is like incredible for crazy phenomenon, like paranormal stuff, and especially lights, like orbs and lights and this kind of thing. Like, lots of really neat things captured on camera. And we had the funniest incident. We're walking down this trail, and the trails are very dark because they're sheltered with trees around you, both sides. And it was night, and we saw this great big bright light that was like far up, like further up the path. And we thought, oh yeah, okay, maybe it's a bike light or something, because there was a bike trail not far from where we were, and it was so intense, it was so bright, it was like an LED light. And we were walking down this path, and we heard footsteps coming towards us, kind of around the corner in front of us. And we thought, oh yeah, somebody like out for a walk with this light. And we stopped and put our cameras down because we didn't want to blind this person coming around the corner. And we waited for them to come around the corner. The light vanished, and no one showed up around the corner. It was just crazy, and we're kicking ourselves because here we are, we're trying to be courteous to this person, and we missed this crazy opportunity to photograph this thing. But it happens to the best of us. So we still laugh about that, but it's really crazy. So that's kind of the deal with the orb thing. So I would just say to Cookie's Queen, it's if you're looking to photograph an orb, a lot of this type of thing is get into a place where there has been a lot of like noted activity. it is so difficult to catch one of these things in real life on camera. It really is hard. They're very random. They're very fast. They show up and disappear before your brain's even computing what's going on. And sometimes it's kind of chance in a way, to go to some of these places and catch an actual light anomaly on camera. I mean, just ask scientists how hard it is to catch ball lightning, right? It's like, I can't even think of a photograph where there's been ball lightning. So you want to have an area that's got a ton of activity in it, and avoid these opaque things that you're seeing floating around your cameras. Those aren't anomalies. Those are really explainable, super explainable. So getting on to the next question. I loved this because I think we've been talking over the last number of days on spiritual healthcare about some pretty important things involving our vision, involving families, getting families on the same page, as investigators and just in our daily life, in terms of having a vision, having a goal, manifesting what we want, and how do you do that, and how do you deal with hauntings when you've got family members that are fighting you, arguing with you, like, the family dynamic, of course, plays such a huge role in the type of paranormal phenomenon that's occurring in the house. And what do you do when you've got all of this hoopla going on and everybody's on the same page? So we talked about this in the last class and the class before, and the question that I got via email, and I don't remember who had asked it, was, how do you tell our story in a way that stops the negative thought? Read this here. What you actually saw, what you heard, and what you were told. What's the difference? How do we dissect this? How do we get rid of that negative factor in our stories? Sally says the orb thing burst her bubble. I thought, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But it's better that people know, right? It's better that people know. It's really, it is something that I think most people mistake. And part of it too is because we have a society and a media that's kind of set up, that's acting like that's not been explained, where any photographer will tell you this, like any photographer will this isn't new information. It's just people, I think the paranormal community is set up to kind of support this stuff, and it doesn't always mean that it's true, so let's talk about that. Telling our stories. What do? We've got everybody, if you've got people that are arguing or are not agreeing on something, or not agreeing about what they saw, whether it be a paranormal event, whether it be something that's going on in your experience, what do you do about it? So I wrote a little bit about this in my book, actually, Teaching the Living. And so those of you guys who have read this will remember this section, where I kind of dissect the 3 layers of a haunting, which I think is going to apply to this in here in just a second. So there's 3 aspects for investigators when we're looking at a client's case, okay, that I think translates into our everyday life for people that are just dealing with family, coworkers, friends, and all of those things. So you've got 3 aspects to this. The first one is a person and their own thoughts that you have to consider. Okay, that's got nothing to do with you, like 0 things to do with you. That's a person and their own thoughts. That's patterns that we see in people's behavior. Okay, reflect the type of haunting experience, like we've talked about. We're not, and as I say, this isn't a matter of blame. This isn't blame, fault, because as I say, fault implies blame. But again, that emotional state that we're perpetuating dictates the encounters that we're experiencing. The second one is the environment and the person's perceived reality. Again, nothing to do with you. It's the person's perceived reality, and the reality that they're perceiving. And remember, that's going through filters, that's going through biases, that's going through belief systems, is going to determine not only how they are interpreting their environment, how they are receiving the information that they're getting, whether it be visually or to hear it. And it's ultimately going to determine usually what exactly they're experiencing, their state of expectation. And then the third factor, which is over and above all of that, which is the paranormal phenomenon, or not, occurring in the environment as a result of the frequency of the person's thought. So the thing that's going on in the environment that is a result of what the thought is. And the reason why I like to break this stuff down, and the reason why I think this is so important, is because whether it's paranormal phenomenon or something that people are experiencing, we forget that very rarely is an attack, is somebody's opinion, is somebody's outlook on something. Very, very rarely is it personal. It's usually not personal. And one of the negative patterns I think that we as people get into so frequently is we take shit too personally. We just do. We just take shit too personally. You know, we think it's about us. It's usually not. So when somebody turns around and is up straight denying, you know, that you saw something or this happened or that happened, or, you know, you're full of it or whatever, more often than not, that belief structure is about them. It's not about you. So I think that's something that's really, really important. So one of the things that I think we forget on a daily basis is the fact that thoughts are things. Thoughts are things. We don't think about that because we can't see a thought really. Like, we see it in our minds, but we don't really think of it as something physically tangible that we can actually pick up and hold in our hand. But thoughts are physically things. They exist on a frequency. They are measurable. They are, you know, they're electrical signals. They are a physical thing, and we forget about this. And when we've got something that is carrying energy, if it's bad, if we're holding a thought that's bad, well, guess what? Other thoughts that are negative will start to join that thought. If you've got something that is really positive, you're going to have the same thing. Other thoughts will join that thought. That's why sometimes, you know, you'd be laying in bed and you're kind of having a negative thought, and then you find yourself starting to spiral. Elizabeth Gilbert, the author and the teacher, she's got a rule that she says no horizontal thinking. Because she knows if she's laying in bed and she comes up with a negative thought, it's going to start to attract these other negative thoughts. And it's really hard to get out of that momentum, especially when you're laying in bed at night. So what does that mean for us? It means that, translated into everyday life, you can kind of break what I just said, or I guess translate what I just said into everyday life, which is we tell our stories in a few ways. The facts, which are what happened. The fiction, which is how you're perceiving what happened. And the truth, which is the value, the purpose, the meaning, the opportunity, I guess the reason, some people call it a reason, as to why it happened, what the point was, and what you can get out of it. 3 different things. Applies to everything. And when we understand that we will tell our story in a way that will support whatever that vision is. We talked about vision. We talked about doing some vision boards a little bit the last class. And when we realize that when we get to choose how to tell our story based on that premise, the fact, the fiction, the truth, whatever you've got going on, how you're perceiving this in your environment, how you're perceiving your environment, it's going to determine what we're saying to ourselves and how we tell our story. So we want to start to eliminate some of that negative crap, right? We want to start to eliminate some of that negative crap out of how we are phrasing this to ourselves, because ultimately that's the only thing we have control over, is our own perception, how we tell our story. And that's going to determine what's going on around us. Irene's asking, where can I buy the books? Amazon. For those of you guys who don't have Teaching the Living, Amazon has it, for sure. They definitely have it. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to get a hold on. Oh, thank you, Corey. Corey just posted it. I wanted you guys to get a hold on, because I think some of this will stand out for you. This is some of what I've noticed with some of my clients over the years. That these are probably the number one things, because there's a few of them. There's a few number ones that keep people the most stuck in their rut, whether it be in a negative haunting, negative space in their life, whatever it is. There's a number of thought patterns, how they perceive the world, and how they perceive what's happening to them, that is ultimately creating the results that they're getting over and over and over again. So one of the big ones that I see often is all or nothing thinking. All or nothing. So either the situation, the thing they experienced was either entirely good or it was entirely bad. And what happens when we get into this is that it actually stops us from going back and looking at what actually was going on. What happened? What are the facts of what happened? Not our perception of the facts of what happened. What are the facts of what happened? No heat, no judgment, no nothing on it. Just what happened. So that's a really, really big one. When it comes to people and families interacting with each other, trying to mind read with the other person or mind read with what they think is going on. So basically, people making up what other people are thinking. And usually my first question is, well, did you ask them? The odds are probably not. Usually the answer is no. They just know. In hauntings, and I see this quite frequently, and I think this is something that we do in our day-to-day life if we're not careful, is the idea that we fortune tell the future, predicting what we think is going to happen or what we think someone will or won't do. This is a big one. Especially in hauntings, this is a big one. And investigators run into this problem often, and it can run them into a lot of trouble. So when we are trying to predict what somebody will or won't do, you don't give room or a model for anything that can possibly alter that situation or change it. You've already made up your mind and you're projecting it onto other people. So that's a big problem. Personalizing, which I ended up talking about a little bit here beforehand. Everything is just not about you. It's just not about you. And I get this, sometimes we'll see this on social media. You guys have all, I guarantee you have all had this happen to you. You post a meme or something, and then the next thing you know, you get a text message from a friend, and they're like, how could you say that about me? And you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And you get that a lot with lots of different people in different situations. But we've got to stop personalizing what is going on. If somebody else has a problem, that's not your problem. I think so many people, especially when they get into to film and TV, and my face is bloody everywhere on everything and whatever, and if people got nothing to do but to criticize you or whatever, that's not your problem. It's not your problem. Leave it alone. That's their issue. That's not your issue. You don't have to engage with that. And reacting is probably one of the chief negative patterns that I see with families dealing with hauntings, and also just with people in general. We see it on social media all the time. Just because somebody has done something doesn't mean you got to react to it. It doesn't mean you have to react to it. And it's the same thing in haunted places. Just because something has gone on does not mean you have to react to it. It doesn't require you to get on the phone with 20 people to goose up the situation. You don't have to do that. You don't have to react. So you get to choose. And here's the good part. You get to choose how you are going to respond. And that's part of the reason why I get my families and get, people that I'm working with, whether they be clients or businesses or whatever, to develop themselves a vision, because you will react less if you've got a vision in front of you that you're going for. If it doesn't look like something that you want to pull into the vision and the forward motion that you have, don't do it. If it doesn't line up with what you want and what you foresee for yourself, then don't pull it into the vision. It will lose traction. It will lose traction. Our attention going into things is so powerful, and we don't really grasp how powerful that attention of currency, that currency of attention really is. We really don't get it. We often think, well, I'll just make this reply or that reply or whatever. Remember, the thoughts you've got going on will gain momentum. They will gain momentum, and you will bring back to you more of whatever you're putting your focus into. If you're arguing with somebody on the internet and you spend 10 minutes arguing with that person, I guarantee you are going to attract 10 more people that are going to argue with you. It's just the way it works. It's just the way it works. And the same thing with hauntings work the same way. If you spend 30 minutes panicked and focused and dealing with an incident of I don't know, a moving object or something like that you don't want to happen again, you're guaranteeing that it's going to happen again. Guaranteeing, because you're paying attention, you're going to get what you put your attention on every single time. So all of this, we can start to roll into how we are going to tell the story of our experiences. Because if we're turning around and we're making them personal, if we're, I knew this thing was out to get me, or I knew this person was out to get me, or, my family's been cursed my whole life, it has to be about me, or, I was predicting it would happen, and of course it will happen. Well, guess what? Yeah, of course it happened. Of course it happened. That's where your energy is focused. As soon as you've got that going on, promise you will get exactly where your attention is. If you predict something that will happen, the odds are it just might, because if you've got your momentum going in that direction, you will create it. Probably one of the worst and most damaging things that we do when we're trying to tell the story about an incident, about our life, about our experiences in the world, I think probably one of the most damaging things that we can do is labeling. So labeling and fault finding is probably one of the worst things that we can do, because how we complete the sentence of I am, you start the sentence with I am, how we complete that sentence is everything. If you are saying I am stupid, I am frightened, I am too tired, I am, however you are completing that sentence, you are ingraining it in your subconscious, in how, and when we've got something going on in our head that's inset like that, we end up unconsciously acting on it. And Dr. Phil said something years ago that he said, says often, which is we generate the results in life that we think we deserve. And when we've got an issue with labeling ourselves and fault finding with ourselves and not telling our story in an advantageous way, then we will end up generating that result every single time. And the damn thing is that we end up attracting to us exactly what we believe we deserve. And it happens every time. So it is, if nothing else, it should appeal to your greed to tell your story in a different way. I think it's super important. So what do we do with this? So here we've got a pile of, you look at your story, there's probably been a few factors in here that you've thought to yourself, that's me, I do that. What do we do? How do we do that? How do we rewrite this so that we're telling our own personal story about an incident, about our life, about our relationships, about whatever, in a new and a way that benefits us? So the first thing we really have to understand is have the courage to identify what you do, why you do it, and how you do it. What do you do? What out of these things do you do? And there's probably a list of others. Why do you do it? How do you do it? What you do, and when? When do you do this? When do you do this? When somebody turns around and asks you how your day is, what are you doing? What are you saying back? When somebody asks you, well, how did you grow up? How do you tell the story of how you grew up? What parts do you emphasize? What do you think about? What comes to mind? To drag it into the realm of the paranormal. If somebody asks you about the incident that just happened, or the place you used to live in, how do you tell that story? How do you tell that story? I see this often, actually, interestingly enough, on shows like Haunted Hospitals or Paranormal 911. You want to hear how somebody tells their story? Watch those shows. And that's not just a plug because I'm on the shows, but but honestly, watch those shows, because when you can hear the people tell the story, as to what they perceived happened to them, you'll hear it immediately. You'll hear it immediately. You'll hear it in how they tell their story. Listen to their words. Listen to their wordage. Listen to their verbiage about how how the experience was for them, what they learned from it, what did they take away from it, how are they repeating it back? All of those things. It tells you volumes about why they experienced what they experienced. The second one is when you find yourself doing that thing you do, because you all know what it is that you do specifically. Don't engage it. Learn to stop. Learn to stop in the moment. Learn to stop the momentum in the moment and go, wait a minute. No. I just identified this. I'm not doing this again. Be self-aware enough to identify it. Stop it. Stop it. There was a really, really great comedy bit years ago. I think it was with Bob Newhart, and the whole comedy routine was somebody complaining, and they would complain. They have this long list of complaints and whatever, and they would ask him for advice, and his only advice was stop it. And they never knew what to do. They were just, well, what? Like, because they're expecting some deep answer, right? They're expecting some deep answer, and he would just say, stop it. So learn to tell yourself that. Learn to tell yourself that. So I think that's super important. And the third aspect to this is let it go. Don't beat yourself up for doing it. Just let it go. Do a different thing. You get to choose. Do a different thing. Tell the story in a new way. Rephrase it. Start to train your brain in how to do that. And take a look at how you're telling the story of whether it be, the haunting that you're experiencing or a haunting you did experience, either your relationship, your childhood, all of that. Take a look at it. How are you telling the story? Because it'll give you some really good insight as to how you're moving through the world, and what you're telling yourself about what's going on. It's so easy to get kind of wrapped up and sucked into our own narrative, because our narrative is in our head and nobody is there to challenge the narrative, right? So we really have to learn to kind of self-police a little bit and say, how are we telling the story, and understand that, yeah, if you're feeling stuck at all, probably the answer is in there as to why. So it's eliminating all of that. And just remember that, what we're speaking into existence all the time. We're speaking into existence. Linda's saying, it's a good reason to journal and tell our story. Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's a really great way of doing that, because when we journal, when we write it down, when we ask ourselves these questions and then we write the answers out, you really start to see how you're telling the story, especially if you journal it out and then read it back to yourself. Leave it for a night, write it out, leave it for a night, and then come back and read it out. Or if you have somebody that you trust, have them read it back to you and see what it sounds like. If you don't have somebody to read it back to you, record yourself, get your phone, record your story, and then listen to it. Because it's really funny when people see themselves on camera telling their story, or hear themselves. Sometimes it's just enough of a distance and a dissociation where they can start hearing, where the faults in their thinking are, and where the gaps are in their thinking, and kind of what frequency they're on. Sometimes we just don't hear it. But as I say, the next time, I know the new season of Haunted Hospitals is in Canada right now. It should be in the States soon. It's interesting when you watch the show, or when I get the interview tapes or anything like that, and I'm listening to the transcript, or I'm watching the show or whatever, and yeah, listening to the people tell their story, it will tell you volumes about who they are. That's one of the reasons why if I'm actually doing a case, which I don't do a ton of them anymore, is I'm listening when I'm dealing with the client. I'm listening on a number of different levels. I'm not just hearing what they're saying, I'm hearing what isn't said, and I'm seeing their body language. I'm hearing the way they're phrasing things. You know, when somebody's saying, oh my God, I was scared to death. Well, no, you weren't scared to death because you're sitting here telling me the story. You know, so there's a lot of exaggerations. There's a lot of, you know, how people are rewriting the incident in their mind will tell you a lot about kind of how they move through the world. So it's really interesting it's interesting. So you do that with yourselves and you're going to find the same thing. Because as I say, when you watch the show, you're gonna watch it differently. You know, or if you've got somebody who is, you know, I've used the example of exaggeration, but there's the opposite as well. This is the minimization, which let me tell you is straight up violence sometimes against yourself in a way. When you've got people, because you've got people that exaggerate, that like blow it way the hell out of proportion, but you've also got people who will have something really, really terrible happen to them, and then they've lost their voice to the point where they minimize their own experience. So that's another aspect of this, I guess, that I should probably mention is, you know, the people that, you know, you've got the ones that are so far on the one end, but you'll have people that are so far on the other end. And sometimes it can be because of trauma, or it can be because, you know, they were, you know, raised in a situation where this stuff wasn't spoken about. But whatever has gone on in their experience, they've lost their voice about it. So they will minimize their emotions about what happened or how it affected them, and they stuff it. They just stuff it down, and that can be generating of activity as well in the house. So we know that the emotions of rage and hurt are some of the key emotions that generate psychokinesis. Right, so when you stuff that emotions, when you stuff that, it has to explode somewhere. So you always got to watch for that as well. But anyway, I wanted to cover some of that with you guys today because I thought it would be kind of valuable as you sort of move forward and, you know, look at your vision. If you guys missed that class, that was last week, so the day 142. We talked about getting a vision together, whether it be for yourself or for your family, and it was a really, really great class, great discussion and everything. So if you missed that, check that out on last week's. It was really good. So I wanted to read a little bit from Faith in the Valley because I found a little paragraph in here that I thought was really really profound with what we were talking about today, because when we start to rewrite our narrative, we really are becoming someone new, right? Because the old narrative really is, and this is what makes it hard, it really is an identity. It becomes an identity, you know, in a lot of ways. We identify with that narrative, and then it's very hard to change it because we think we're somehow denying something that's happened to us, which isn't true at all. It's not true. You're not denying what has happened to you. You're reframing it for your own selfish purposes. So check this out. Check this paragraph out because I think you'll dig this. Courage not only means being able to do something new, it also means taking steps to be someone new. Some of us talk a great deal because we're afraid we won't be heard. Others never say anything in fear of saying the wrong thing. Some of us are overreactive and hyperactive because we fear missing out. There are those of us who are withdrawn, lethargic, inactive, in fear of messing up. One of the first steps in developing a courageous outlook and approach to life is being able to look at ourselves, our beliefs, our attitudes, and our patterns. Courage enables us to examine. Examination enables us to choose. Courage is more forceful, aggressive, bold, outward action. It's more than that. It's at its most infinite level. Courage is an in-depth, inward examination which leads to alteration and application of a new way to be. New way to be. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's super true, and that's what this is. And that's ultimately that's what my program Teaching the Living is. It's a new way. It's a new way to start looking at ourselves, creating a vision so that we're attracting what we want, whether it be paranormal activity, the good paranormal activity, or whether you're attracting something that you've got on your bucket list or whatever it is. That's it. That's it right there. That's Teaching the Living right there. Is we gotta decide that we're gonna be different, And we got to stop thinking that hauntings and all this stuff, it's asserted on us. It's not. It's not. We attract it. We attract exactly what we are on the frequency of. We attract what we're doing, what we are emotionally doing every time. Every single time. So, that being said, everybody, this was an awesome spiritual healthcare, if I do say so myself. I gotta find our affirmations there. I hope this was super helpful to people, because as I say, it's everybody, I think, right now. And here's the thing, because I don't know what everybody's doing. I know the states are far more open right now than Canada is. And Canada, here in Alberta, we just went into another lockdown. It's crazy. But I think all of this and all this crazy that's happening, and crazy on a number of levels, but it is really causing, I think, a lot of people, especially artists, to question, what do you want? What do you want? What do you really want? And how bad do you want it? And how bad are you willing to change yourself in order to create that? So I know there's a lot of people that are going through it. I know I'm going through it. I know I've got so many friends and artists and production and things like that are going through it. And it's like, what do you want? How bad do you want it? And are you willing to change yourself enough to get it? It's the big question. And a lot of clients that I work with, it's just funny, a lot of clients that I work with, they don't want it that bad. They would rather stick with their narrative. They would rather stick with the crazy ass haunting in their house than they would to change the dynamic of what they're doing in order to get different. It's just, and that's why some of the ghost hunter shows are so popular, because it's a quick fix. What they believe is a quick fix, and there is no quick fix in this. So, we need some affirmations before we go. So, everybody, shake yourself out. Shake yourself out. Shake yourself out. Take a deep breath. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. Breathe. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself for who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, whether I choose to allow it or not. I recognize and I feel with my very breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all of the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I am able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. Everybody take a breath. Thank you all for this awesome Wednesday morning of spiritual health care. This has been fantastic, and I am looking forward to Wednesday next week. We get to do it all again. I get to do it all again on day 144, so there you go. And next week is going to be really, really cool. I was doing some thinking about it, and I know there's going to be more questions than even I've got written down, but I really want to go over the idea of the balance between making stuff happen versus letting it happen, which is a great question that came in recently, and I'm going to we're gonna talk about that. What is the difference? When do you let go? What's the balance? Like, when is action needed? Because especially in hauntings, sometimes you got to do stuff. There's actions that you have to take in the immediate. So what's the balance? Where does that sit? So we'll see you guys next Wednesday. Spiritual healthcare, of course. All the classes are on EntitySeeker.ca, the brand new EntitySeeker.ca. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, do it. It is the little subscription thing is right at the bottom of the website. So throw in your email, subscribe, and it's going to be awesome. So I will see you guys next Wednesday. All right. Bye, everybody.